Welcome to the Counselling Tutor Podcast, the must-listen-to podcast for students of counselling and psychotherapy. Here are your hosts, Rory Lees-Oakes and Ken Kelly.
Hi, I'm Rory, and with me, as always, is Ken. How are you, Ken?
I'm, at the time of this recording, very pleased to say, Rory, that I'm feeling in good health. My family are in good health, and I know that for some listening to this, it might be a troubling time. How are things in your circle, Rory?
We're all, at the moment, safe and well and self-isolating as what we should be at times like this. But thank you for asking, Ken. Yes, everybody at Counselling Towers is safe and well.
So this is a COVID-19 special edition of the Counselling Tutor Podcast. It's the second episode in the COVID specials that we are running to reflect the times that we find ourselves in with a world pandemic and isolation in most countries in the world. Today's episode will be highlighting some of the questions, issues, discussions that are happening on our Facebook page related to the pandemic that's going on at the moment. Our first topic is speaking about students who are now needing to, engage online with their learning institutions, with their colleges, with the universities, and how that is feeling to kind of go through that change to online as opposed to going into a class environment. Our second topic today is we're going to be looking about online supervision. It is an ethical requirement, certainly here in the UK, and I guess in most countries in the world, that a clinical practitioner, a counsellor, a psychotherapist in practice will need to take their casework to supervision. We can't do that in a face-to-face setting anymore. So how is that adapting to online? What does that look like? And then our third topic for today, we're kind of focusing on where clients are at this moment and talking about managing client anxiety over this isolation period. So starting off, Rory, college courses, going into college, no longer a thing that is happening, certainly here in the UK. A lot of learning institutions turning to the tutors, delivering course material online, but the challenges, a lot of things coming up for people.
Absolutely. And I want to give a real shout out to my colleagues who tutor. Hats off to you, because there's a lot of tutors who never envisaged that they would be teaching online, and they've had to gain a lot of skills very quickly. I think, Ken, we tend to forget just how easy we are with technology. We use it all the time for the podcasts, for the lectures that we give, even for our day-to-day activities. Ken and myself are 40 miles apart, and we meet up to make content or make the podcast, and we do it without a second thought, and it's because we do it every day. There's a lot of tutors out there who literally are having to learn from scratch, and hats off to them, because they're trying to keep their courses going. They're trying to look after their students, and for those, of course, in practice, that's essential. But I think if you're a student, it could be really, really frustrating. Because, certainly in training, you're used to working face-to-face with someone in the room, and online, it's completely different. And of course, if you've got a class of, say, 15 people in a chat room, there's a fair amount to manage there. And I know I picked up from our Facebook group, and if you're not a member of our Facebook group, just go into Facebook, type Counselling Tutor. We're a closed group. If you knock on the door, of course, we're going to let you in at a time like this. Come on in. And I'm picking up that some students are feeling really frustrated. My message would be, just stick with it and stick with your tutor, because your tutor's just doing the best they can. And I think there's a positive in this, Ken. We're moving into an online world. When this pandemic ends, and it will end, there'll be an end to it at some point, the idea of online therapy will eventually stick. It'll be the new norm. Before this happened, there were a few people doing it quite successfully. But I think now it will become the norm. I think agencies may adopt online and get the learning from what's happened. So if I was a student, I would be kind of thinking I'm getting some extra learning here as well, because I'm going to be engaging with the technology at some point. But yeah, a lot of adaptation, I think, at this time, Ken.
I join you, Rory, in a round of applause and taking our hats off, as you say, Rory, to the tutors out there that are adapting to the current situation. And message to the students, as you said, Rory, is exercise patience. It's a transition period at the moment. We're all changing gears. We're all making massive adjustments. Your tutors also have families and loved ones and their lives to live. And it's a really, really challenging time. And I have no doubt that the tutors out there are doing the best they can. I know, Rory, you're in a number of tutor groups, virtual tutor groups online, and you're kind of hearing that it's challenging for the tutors as well. And one of the things we lose, as a student, is the sense of community, because you've got that kind of maybe once a week or however often you go into your learning institution, you've got that. You're surrounded by people who understand what course you're on, what you're doing, what you're going through, because they're traveling that road with you. And very often our families, our friends, our loved ones don't kind of understand our counselling journeys at the best of times. And we've spoken about this on previous podcasts, how you kind of feel a little bit isolated, but being cut off from that group. And I just remember when we were tutoring, Rory, how often students would come in and say, "Oh, it's so good to come in tonight because now I know I'm surrounded by people who actually get it and who actually understand it." And losing that, you're not just losing your course, you're not just losing that weekly learning, you're losing that sense of community as well. So one of the things I can share that works very well and has kind of been replicated in other areas, and we certainly use it here in Counselling Tutor for our own teams and special projects that we run, is to pop into Facebook. And within Facebook, you can actually start a private group where nobody can find it. It's not searchable on Facebook. And if you can get a private group going and get your course members into that private group, you've got a little place where you can hang out, where you can chat. And this is a message to tutors that those private groups are available. All you need is contact details of your learners. You can invite them in via their email address, and then they can click on a link and join in that private group. But even as students yourself, you can put together these groups, and that can kind of give you that sense of community. It can be a place that you can hand out, share where you are, in a kind of closed environment that is not open to the public.
Yes, and I think there's a lot of tutors using WhatsApp groups for the same. A lot of students using WhatsApp groups. I know that I've been in contact with someone recently who's part of a WhatsApp group, and it may be that there may be some very good reasons some people won't want to go on Facebook. There are people who may be in law enforcement or in the legal profession, or maybe people who have had to move because they've been threatened by ex-partners, or so sometimes Facebook doesn't really feel the safest place. But things like WhatsApp groups can be very, very useful. And if you are a tutor out there, look up Yammer, which is Microsoft's own online community app, which is very, very useful. And I think it brings something else into really real relief here, Ken, is that, you go to college, you sit there, you process, you meet your peers, you socialize, and then you come home. You are in your home when you're being taught. And you're going to have to think very carefully, and I'm sure colleagues have considered this, I'm sure they have. It is that what processes are undertaken. If you're learning something like 7 stages of process, or internal or external locus of evaluation for the first time, you may be sitting at home thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is something that's real in my relationship," and your family could be sat in the next room. So I think there's something about how you manage your own processes at times like this. And of course, it goes without saying that the software and the interactions you have need to be secure. There is a general data protection regulation here in the UK, and in fact most of Europe, and in fact most of the world have got their own data protection legislation. So you need to be thoughtful of that. So it is very, very, very different, but I do believe that it will prepare students really, really well for the world to come, because I think the world of counselling is going to change dramatically after this pandemic has ceased.
Such innovation that we are seeing at this time, where companies, individuals, organizations, charities are changing what they did and doing it differently to adapt to how it is at the moment. And through that innovation comes change, which you spoke about, Rory, right at the beginning. I just want to kind of just look at what you were speaking about, process, because one of the benefits of counseling training, and if you look back over our podcast, you're going to recognize that Rory and I always say that online counseling training is not a substitute for the face-to-face, because you get so much value in the face-to-face. But times are as they are right now, and we do need to adapt, and we need to modify our thinking to match what we're seeing at the moment. But one of the great benefits from that in-person training is the process groups, as you were saying, Rory, where you can kind of bring what's happening for you and hear that listened to empathically in a secure environment. And that's something else that has been lost, your PD group, your personal development group. And I guess one of the things that comes to mind for me is journaling. Journaling is a great way to process your thoughts and your feelings at a time like this, when you are in isolation, rather than them just swimming around in your head, going around in circles with you not having anybody to share those with. Take out your paper journal, your pen, your pencil, pop it down, start scribbling away, just put down whatever comes from you as a way of processing at this challenging time, processing in isolation.
Yeah, and of course, security and safety are important here. There may be students who wouldn't want to have a diary that could be accessed by a partner. I know when I did my training many years ago, there was at least one peer on my course whose partner used her journal in a divorce case. I know Ken's wincing at the other end of the screen.
Yeah,
so it's about helping learners be secure. And I wonder, Ken, if we're going to see a resurgence of what's called the co-counselling movement. Before supervision is a reasonably new concept. Back end of the 80s, I think, and before then, people would meet up with a therapist and just talk through what was going on for them. It wasn't particularly supervision as we know it, and it wasn't particularly personal therapy, but it was just a way of unloading. And I wonder if we'll see that co-counselling movement start to thrive and develop, where, you might get two therapists who just meet up and just chat and online about what's going on for them and gain some support. And it's amazing that a kind of an older idea may come back into prominence the longer this goes on.
I agree with you. And I know, Rory, you and I chat often and share stuff that's going on for us. And of course, if you are engaging in, like, maybe speaking to a peer, a fellow counsellor about what's going on, and kind of using that in not as supervision, but in a supervisory way to get kind of somebody you can bounce stuff off and reflect back. Just think to your contract that you have with your client. Make sure that you are covering where any kind of disclosure will happen there. And of course, if you maybe are speaking to a friend or colleague, you don't have to give any client details. You can speak broadly and speak more about what's going on for you rather than what's going on for your clients. But definitely very, very useful. And I guess it leads us very neatly on to our next topic, Rory, which is online supervision.
It is. I had supervision this week with my supervisor. My supervisor lives in the Peak District, so that's a lovely drive, a bit of contemplation for me as I drive through the hills and the winding roads of the Peak District to see my supervisor. But this week it was very different. We met up online, and I had to teach my supervisor how to use the technology. I mean, she was already using Skype to talk to family and friends, but just to set up, we use Zoom here, which is very, very secure. So the thought there, of course, is security. Making sure that you use a secure platform to speak with your supervisor. It's the same principle as you'd use if you were doing online counselling with a client. And I have to say that I've worked with my supervisor for a lot of years, very experienced supervisor. But it was very, very different. And it was different for her because I've got a recording studio here at Counselling Towers, like Ken has. All the equipment set up, all the lighting, absolutely everything. And she was balancing an iPad on some cushions. So it was very different. Now I'm okay with that. That's fine. But it just brings me to the point is we're all going to have to adapt. And, you know, you need to work with your supervisor. And supervisors, I'm sure, don't need telling this, but they're probably going to have to work with their supervisees to allay kind of anxieties about supervising online, maybe help them with the technology, and still deliver that high quality supervision. And there may be supervisors who just can't operate the technology. There may be supervisors who just are not technological savvy. What do you do then? Is it a phone? Do you have supervision on the phone, which is fine, or do you think, well, perhaps my needs aren't being met? You know, I need to sit in front of someone, and you know, maybe you need to change your supervisor. So in supervision, there's lots of things that need to be considered. Not least, how do you pay your supervisor? You know, usually, I think that it's usually a cash transaction. It is certainly with my supervisor, and I get a receipt, and that's fine. But this time I had to set banking details up and make sure I got the right banking details and go onto my online banking so I could pay her. So there's, again, even in that aspect of our practice, a lot of changes, Ken.
There are, and you've just touched on so many there, and the barrier for so many of those solutions that we can kind of key into now are an understanding of the technology. And you may be listening to this and have that thought that I've heard so many times from so many people, oh, I'm not really good with computers, or I'm not really good with technology. And I think at a time like this, we need to take that script and reevaluate it, look at it, the wording, I'm not very good with technology, I'm not very good with computers, and maybe look at how can we get something, how can we start kind of putting some attention into some continuing professional development. There you go, the words again, Rory, of how to empower yourself. And I use that word at the moment, empower, because that's exactly what this is. And a great platform for learning how to use technology is YouTube. If you can get onto a browser like a Google Chrome or any browser that you have, if you can go onto the internet and write in YouTube comes up, and YouTube is like a massive search engine with billions of videos. And if you put in a search term like how to I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something. You mentioned Zoom, Rory, because Zoom is video software that we use so that we can see one another and we can talk. We're actually using it right now. We're making this podcast using Zoom as the technology. And Zoom is a free platform if you just use it for one-to-one discussions. So if you wanted to learn about Zoom, if you went into YouTube and put Zoom tutorial, you'll probably find you get a lot of videos back, and you can watch those videos and they take you step by step. And that's just one example. Whatever it is you're looking for, if it's technology based, YouTube is a great platform. Put in the search that you're looking for with the word tutorial, and you're almost guaranteed to get some kind of tutorials back. Can't vouch for the quality of all of them. You'll have to search through and maybe find one that speaks to your learning style, but it is a great place to brush up and empower ourselves at this difficult time during isolation.
Yes, and I know that lots of people may have children at home, but there's time. You got time to do these things. So, after you've gone out for your shopping or your one exercise per day, why don't you set yourself a little bit of CPD to learn about the online world? If you're consuming this, you're already really there, aren't you? Because if you're listening to this podcast, you're already in the online world. So yes, it is different. And I would say to supervisors that managing supervisees' anxiety. I do a lot of online supervision, and I have to say that, well, in fact, all my supervision's online now. But when I'm speaking with colleagues that I'm supervising, helping them to understand the technology. and discussing it, bringing it into the room. It isn't, as my supervisor would say, it's an elephant in a room. And sometimes just saying, what's it like to work like this? What's it like to, be remote and not face to face, and explore that. And I think that's just such a useful dialoguing, because it can reduce anxiety, it can normalize the situation, and it can allow then for the business of supervision to carry on, which of course is always in the service of clients.
100%, and ethical requirements. Certainly here in the United Kingdom, we still need to be going and taking our client work to supervision. And the supervision is a great place to kind of parallel what's going on in practice. So may well be that you're not able to see your clients face to face. May well be that you're having to touch base with your clients via a digital medium, via the telephone, via email. And again, we implore that you do proper training on that, so that you've got the core competencies in place to be able to work that way. But you get to then go into supervision online and get to feel what that's like. So much is different online in terms of you can't really see all the visual cues that you might see in a face-to-face situation. Often when you're working online, even if you're working with video, you're just looking ostensibly at a passport photograph of the person. You're seeing their head and their shoulders. You can't see the rest of their body. And you'll know from working with clients, if you're in practice or placement, that so often we can tell so much from a client that is below the shoulders. They may be clenching their fists as they say something, or it may be just the way that they're sitting. We can kind of read things, and that is lost when you're online. So how is that for you if you are doing online supervision? You're taking your client work in. Do you feel heard? Do you feel understood? Are you able to bring it in the same way as you would face to face, and parallel that to how it might be for your clients in your practice?
Yeah, absolutely can. And as I say, as this becomes the new norm, I think people will get used to it. But you're quite right. We're looking at passport pictures of each other across the studio monitors here. Ken's gurning like a 2-year-old.
Pulling faces on my passport photo.
and you can't see non-verbal cues. Kicking of legs, you just can't see. You can't see people's legs. So it is adapting, and I think the way that you work may be more kind of intuitive. You may ask, what's your body telling you about that? I would be doing that and saying, when you're speaking about this, are your legs moving? Are you, how does it feel? To try and get a really good picture of of the supervisee. But yeah, challenging times, and again, hats off to supervisors who are stepping up. My supervisor kind of went into this gung-ho and with relish. Oh, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, Rory, and very, very enthusiastic. And I'm very grateful to her. She's supporting me in my work.
Indeed. And I guess that leads us very neatly on to our final topic for this COVID special episode, where we're going to be speaking about managing clients' anxiety, because it's our clients' work that we take to supervision. So let's change that focus down onto the clients and recognize there's a lot in the media at the moment speaking about mental health over the time of isolation. People's routines are taken away. People's social structure, bonding is taken away. So much is removed, and specifically people that were fragile before the crisis hit. This is certainly not going to aid them in any way, and it can kind of magnify that. It can put a lens that magnifies that anxiety at a really difficult time. As counsellors, as psychotherapists, if we're out there working with clients, even in placement position, we may be hearing this coming in, and we need to be mindful of how we work with the anxiety of the present day.
Yes, and the projection of that anxiety. This is a unique situation in the world. We're literally all in the same boat. We're literally all in the same boat with this wretched virus, and of course, therapists are anxious. I'll be honest. My anxiety levels have raised since this outbreak, and I'm sure that is not abnormal for the world we live in. But I'll give you an example. I was talking to a colleague who was in an office just before everything was closed down, phoning the client and suggesting they had telephone counselling. And the client was really angry because he felt that face-to-face was the only way of dealing with his issue. And that anger was projected onto the therapist who kind of put the phone down and burst into tears. So we're going to dealing with a lot of projection, and it's compounded. You've got what's going on for someone in their life, which at the best of times can be really difficult for people. And then you've got this unusual situation where we're all locked down. I'm sure that there's going to be cases where people aren't getting on. I've got some friends who have separated and living under the same roof, and now they can't go out. And I'm sure that's going to lift anxiety. And also I think that therapists are going to meet the real existential reality, of people really worrying if they're going to catch this virus and what will happen to them. And I think this is an added element to what is already a challenging, it's being a therapist, it can be kind of challenging. So, what do we do to manage clients' anxiety at a time like this? And I'll be honest here. I've said to clients, I hear what you're saying, and I feel the same. I think modeling is really important, making sure the client doesn't feel that they're on their own. And I've said to the client, well, I'm in the kind of higher at risk category. And I've got to be honest, I've got some anxiety about it, although I'm fitting well at the moment. And I think there's something about, not being seen as invulnerable, and just, as I said earlier, all being in it together, normalizing a very abnormal situation, really.
100%. And the presentations that you may see at the moment may seem, I guess, bigger than presentations that you might see. And I'm not kind of downplaying what kind of presentations we see as therapists, but we have a whole raft of people that are at the front line of this epidemic, our medical practitioners, our nurses and our doctors that are dealing with incredibly long shifts, that are dealing with multiple deaths, and they need somewhere to go with this. And you may well find that you're starting to get people coming in who've lost people in their families. We deal with grief. It's difficult to work with at the best of times. We need to be patient. We need to give time. But when in a situation like this, we may be having multiple presentations of people that have lost people around them. It is a really tricky time. And I think Rory called something out so well here, is we are all human. This is something that affects every single person. We're all in this together, and we can recognize that. But there are some things we need to watch out for. And because when presentations are coming in that kind of some way parallel what's going in our own lives, we have to be very clear of how we separate ourselves out from that and focus on what the client is bringing. And the other element, and I guess where do we go with that, is to supervision, our previous topic. It all kind of ties in, doesn't it? It's kind of a circle. And all of the systems that we're kind of covering today are strained in some way. And I guess the other thing we need to really be looking out for now is counter-transference in this situation, because things might be coming up within us that are triggered by what a client may say. A client may come in, they may be speaking about somebody that is ill, or somebody that they may have lost, and we might be thinking about or be locked in one of our own family members who might be going through something similar. So it is tricky times looking at that transference, counter-transference, where our lives are in some way also paralleling what clients are bringing in. There has never been a time where there is a greater need, I believe, for counsellors and psychotherapists. As people are in isolation, as mental health could deteriorate, we're on that front line. We really are. We're on the front line, mental health front line. And there has never been a more important time for supervisors to be there for your supervisees for that will be coming in at this time.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Ken. And again, I think you picked up on a really interesting point. When we talk about projective identification, where, we feel that we are experiencing the client's anxiety in our own lives. So client could be going through a divorce. or a bereavement, and it's something we're going through. It doesn't happen all the time. I could see a number of clients, and maybe only one may have a presentation that is something that I've been through. Well, we're in this pandemic. Clients are going to be talking about, maybe real and rightly so, very worried about becoming ill or relatives becoming ill. And we're going through that at the same time. So that parallel process is continuous. It's absolute continuous, unless you're the sort of person who really isn't worried about this. In which case, I would say possibly you shouldn't be counselling or doing anything, because it is a very worrying time. And my prediction is that when this is over, we're going to see a huge amount of presentations around loss and bereavement. We're going to see a huge amount of presentations around health issues, life-limiting health issues. Post-traumatic stress, I suspect, is going to be an epidemic, and I don't want to frighten people, but certainly our frontline workers, and I'd like to take the opportunity, heartfelt thanks. Those frontline workers, the paramedics, the doctors, the nurses, police officers, fire officers, ambulances. I'm just trying to think of all the frontline workers, people who work in the shops. Yeah. That's front line. They're in the front line of this, and I know from friends that the amount of post-traumatic stress that's happening, it's incredible. There are people literally having breakdowns, going to sit in front of a till at the supermarket because they're literally taking their life in their hands. And I think when this is over, we're going to see a lot of post-traumatic stress, and I think we're going to see a lot of obsessive compulsive presentations where people have got into rituals such as hand washing and are very concerned about touching things. And I think that is going to be a huge presentation when this is over, because people are working in a stress response. So now more than ever, I think that counselling is going to be an essential part of it. So if you are practicing, be a student, be a qualified colleague, or even anyone who's helping people out there, big thank you to you, really.
Here, really here, Rory. Just one last thing that I'd like to put in just on this topic, managing clients' anxiety or general working with clients. Actually, it's two things. One is self-care first. We need to look to ourselves. So if you feel that you are kind of impacted in a way that you would not be able to fully be there for a client, you need to maybe think about that, think about referral, think about how you might look after yourself first. You need to be robust and well to be able to be there for clients who may be potentially fragile. And then secondly, we speak about contracting so often in Counselling Tutor. It's a common thread. And here again, during these times, it is maybe an opportunity to revisit your contract and maybe mention something about COVID-19. You can remove it as soon as this pandemic has passed over, and it will pass over, as Rory has said. But how would you react, or how would you act, if you as the counsellor developed symptoms? Would you still be able to be there for your clients while going through that? Well, I guess the right thing is no. You should be pulling out and looking after your own health. But it's a good idea to mention that in your contract, and vice versa. How would you work if your client started to show symptoms? What would your contract say within that situation? Maybe suggesting that there is a 7 to 14 day break that you reconnect again. And I this is a horrible things to say, but I guess. There are millions of counsellors around the world, and tens of millions of clients that are engaging in counselling. There's going to be clients that die. There are going to be counsellors who lose their clients. And we can think about this now. We can prepare ourselves for it as our frontline services, as Rory said. Many of our frontline services are witnessing death on a daily basis, mass death on a daily basis. And I think we need to prepare ourselves as well as frontline mental health workers, in a way, being there for people's emotional stability during this time. How do we make ourselves robust? Supervision, looking to self, creating networks with your peers, having a chat with them, journaling what you're feeling in a safe way that can't be felt. These are some of the topics, some of the suggestions from this episode.
Absolutely. And living wills, yes, we may lose clients, I think that's inevitable, but also therapists may become ill and not able to work. So have you got a plan in place to move your client load to another therapist? And I think buddying up, having a co-counselling colleague and making sure that your client knows what will happen if you become ill, I think is really, really important. And living wills are now a kind of an ethical requirement. So yes, we need to prepare ourselves, and also I think that we need to be realistic. I see a lot of people wanting to do volunteering, and I'll help this way and I'll help that way. You need to look after yourself as well. Don't underestimate the kind of impact that hearing difficult stories, one after the other, can have on you. You need to take a break, and you need to, if you're working on the phone or online or in a kind of mental health capacity, if you can, and I know it's not always easy, but you need to really set aside just some time for you to decompress, or you will just burn out.
As we come to the end of this episode, just to mention that on our website, counsellingtutor.com, Rory and I are doing all we can to share resources, links, information that will help people. So drop by our website. In the last week or so, we've put together a course for counsellors to be able to work online. We may be looking at something similar for supervisors to work online. We're trying to build these resources in response. We're seeing it all over the world where people are going into emergency situations as within their companies. Companies that used to make cars are making ventilators. We need to do what we can do now to help in these difficult times, and we're doing all we can, and you can get information on that from counsellingtutor.com, and we know that you're doing all you can as well. Thank you for joining us for this episode. It is a COVID special. I don't like the word special, Rory, to be honest. I mean, it's a special broadcast, but special and COVID, they just don't go well together. But here it is. It's the second one we've done, and hopefully there's something in there that you can take and is useful for you. It's a somber time, Rory.
It is. And as always, stay grounded, please stay safe, and please stay indoors.
Thank you for listening to the Counselling Tutor Podcast. Find the show notes for this episode on our website at www.counsellingtutor.com.